Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar, run through the weather warnings as we still have some yellow warnings issued for the next 24 hours, as we are still going to see generally unsettled conditions dominate for the next few days. However, as we progress towards the latter part of this upcoming week, things are going to be turning quite a bit colder. We are going to see some Atlantic ridging and a blocking area of high pressure start to form out in the Atlantic to our north and our west, and it is looking likely by the end of the week into the weekend we are going to start to pull in some cold or even very cold northeasterly or easterly winds. Pretty much all models now are in agreement on that pattern. As we see from the latest GFS, GM, Eastern BF and the ensembles, the big question we have is the severity and the longevity of any colder weather. And of course, many of you will be wondering, will we see any snow with this pattern? At the moment, the next week, it is looking relatively unlikely we'll see any widespread or disruptive snow. Wintry showers, very possible, even likely, especially for Scotland, and perhaps for eastern areas towards the latter part of this upcoming week. But we're not looking at anything too disruptive, as in the last couple of days, we have seen that blocking area of high pressure slowly shift slightly further south and eastwards on the latest model runs, which means for most, we're under more of a higher pressure influence, which will mean things will be drier, they'll be really frosty, potentially even sunny, but very cold, especially overnight. Interest, though, continues, as this is not going to just be one area of high pressure that comes and goes. It looks like it could hang around for a week, 2 weeks, or even longer, which will mean as we progress through January, the risk increases and continues for more cold weather and potentially for a more snowier pattern, perhaps, especially as we head towards the middle of the month. We'll keep an eye on that and keep you updated and have a look at the latest models in the second half of the video. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now if you start on the live radar, you can see it is very unsettled today, lots of heavy showers, especially further southwards. Scotland, parts of northeast England are relatively dry at the moment, but we'll still see showers through this afternoon and evening. At the moment, the main core of showers across much of England and Wales here, and you can see this little hook that is up towards northwest England. This is actually a small area of precipitation around the centre of the low. Again, it looks kind of like a little mini hurricane on the live radar, with its wrapping around the centre of the low pressure system. But in reality, it isn't anything too severe. I must emphasise that. Yes, there is some very heavy rain around it, and it does look structurally quite significant. But in reality, it is just an area of heavy rain with swirling winds around it. Even these showers further southwards, again, they don't look ridiculously intense, but very squally. Rainfall can fall very heavily all of a sudden, and we could see some very gusty winds within this as well. Luckily, much of this is clearing over the course of this evening and overnight, but we will still see showers, especially further northwards. Perhaps across northwest England, there is looking like to be a bit of a sort of a shower train setting up, and we have got a yellow warning for rain issued for that. So it is going to rain unsettled, but this very unsettled, stormy weather we've had over the past few days is going to slowly subside. And as I said, it's going to turn drier, calmer, but quite a bit colder as we progress through the rest of this upcoming working week. If you look at the temperatures today, it is a fresher day today. Of course, last night we did see that line convection move through and was really squally in places. Again, heard reports of perhaps even some tornadoes and some really significant rainfall right along that area of line convection, the squall line within the cold front. But of course, as that's moved through, it has left cold air behind. Of course, the cold air mass has now swept in, and again, it's not crazy cold out there. It's pretty much an average sort of air mass, but it does feel quite a bit chillier than it has been over the past few days, as we have been very much well above average. Now back towards average, around the mid to high single digits, it is feeling really quite chilly, especially with that really gusty wind as well, meaning the feel-like temperature is towards the low single digits, but that is going to be pretty mild compared to what we will likely see towards the end of this upcoming working week. Scotland still really quite cold, lots of areas just touching freezing, especially over the higher ground, but again, we are end of December, heading into early January. That is not too unusual. Now, if you look at the weather warnings, we haven't got too many warnings issued. for the next couple of days. But at the moment, we've got a wind warning issued for South Wales and much of southern England, especially across the coast. Again, it's in force from 10 a.m. this morning until midnight tonight. Gales or severe gales in association with heavy showers may lead to disruption to transport and infrastructure. Again, a very blustery day for much of southern England and Wales, but with strongest west to northwesterly winds reserved for parts of southwest Wales, southwest England and the English Channel coast. Here, 50 to 55 miles per hour widely, 65 and 75 miles per hour for exposed coast. And these strong gusts will also drive those very squally showers across the region. And of course, there is the risk of hail and thunder. And again, winds will ease from the west to east during the evening. Then we also have this rain warning issued for parts of northwest England. Going to see a bit of a train of showers overnight tonight. So from 6 p.m. until 6 a.m, frequent heavy showers. Again, could be 10 to 20 millimetres, maybe possibly 30 to 40 millimetres. And then, of course, into Monday, that warning is still in force. But for the rest of Monday, not looking at anything too severe. Now, as we've been seeing in the latest UKV, we can see the transition from very unsettled weather today and in places tomorrow, and then towards the colder, drier pattern setting up by the end of the week. And you can see lots of precipitation around this morning, turning a lot more showery this afternoon, but nonetheless still really squally and unsettled, especially over the coming hours. Before through this evening it should slowly subside for most, but of course across that northwest England area where we see that train of showers, it could continue into the early hours of the morning, eventually moving away, and we go briefly dry for tomorrow morning. However, as you can see from the southwest, it does look like it's going to be a relatively decent start to the new year, but rain will be returning for the afternoon and for the evening as we see another low pressure system move in. So the first day of 2024 looks like it's off to a bright start, dry start for many, even though quite a chilly start for many. But heavy rain is coming in for all as we head through the evening. Maybe the far northeast could just about escape it during 1st of January officially, where it arrives for all areas overnight into Tuesday. Again, that rainfall continues to move through. Most of it hopefully should fall through the evening and overnight hours for much of England, Wales and northern England, especially the eastern portions of those regions, so it shouldn't be too disruptive, but you may wake up to Tuesday with a lot of rain having fallen overnight. Through Tuesday, another area of rain could potentially move into the south. And interestingly, if you've watched the last couple of these low pressure systems, they've all shifted slightly further southwards. The last few we saw through the end of last week into this weekend, of course, were much further northwards with the centre of the low and with the northern extent of the weather front. So you can see they are shifting southwards, and that's because the jet stream is shifting southwards as we see the mid-Atlantic ridge starting to take off over the coming days. It's driving the jet stream more wavy and more southwards than we are, and eventually it's going to allow those easterly or northeasterly winds to arrive by the end of the week. You can see next low pressure system through Tuesday morning into Tuesday afternoon does give lots of heavy rain in the south, but most of the really heavy stuff stays offshore. And eventually, as we head through Tuesday into Wednesday, lots more showers around, but no more big low pressure systems as the Atlantic starts to get shut off. As we progress through Wednesday into Thursday, still showery, but look at the wind direction, especially for northern areas. It's shifting into more of a northerly flow as we do see that higher pressure system develop out in the Atlantic, and we start to see colder air drifting in from the north. Initially, it's not going to be that cold, but it's going to be progressively cold over a number of days. So it's not going to be a huge shock to the system. It's not going to be one day 10 degrees, the next day 2 degrees. It's going to slowly progress from sort of 9, 10 degrees on Monday, Tuesday, down to perhaps 2 or 3 degrees by the weekend. And you can see this from the air masses. So these are the 850 HPA temperatures, and generally for proper colder weather, wintry weather, we're looking at -5 or lower, and for sort of a freezing cold, bitterly cold spell, we're looking at -10 or lower. So you can see through today it's around 0. So it is cold, it's around average, but it's not freezing cold at all. Over the coming days, we'll see bits and bobs of colder air move in, but also some milder air. And overall, sort of air mass is going to dominate too much, so it's not going to change the temperatures all too crazy over the next couple of days. So it's generally going to be hovering around average. But as we progress through Monday into Tuesday, air mass is still swirling around, but into the latter part of the week, you can slowly see very cold air to our north starts to drift southwards and starts to dominate for all. And you can see much colder air, -6 to -9 degrees on the top right of the screen, slowly drifting in. As you can see, it is drifting over the course of a number of days, so it isn't going to be, as I said, a sudden shock to the system. But over the course of 2-3 days, we're going to go from average to slightly below average to quite far below average, as I said, into the next upcoming weekend. So it is going to be turning a lot colder. As I said, huge uncertainty though, exactly the severity of the cold, the longevity of the cold, and the risk of any snow. Now, if we do have a look at the longer range now, have a look at the latest operational runs, and then we'll have a look at the ensembles. These are the most important charts, really, when we're looking at the risk of colder, more wintry weather as we progress through January. So you can see the westerly flow continues over the next couple of days, but eventually, as you can see by Tuesday, Wednesday, the Atlantic starts to get shut off and we don't see any big lows move in, as we can see that mid-Atlantic ridge building. By the end of the week, it develops further to our north and starts to pull in a northeasterly wind. Now, the GFS here does something a little bit interesting, not quite what most of the ensemble members are showing or the other operational runs are showing. It does topple the high-pressure system very quickly. So the high pressure sits over the top of us and introduces a slightly milder air mass by the start of the next working week, beyond that in around 8-9 days time. Most runs though hold that northeasterly wind for a bit longer, but eventually most have the high pressure system sat to our northwest or more over the top of us, and that means that most of the very bitterly cold air and the potentially wintry weather is out into Europe or towards Scandinavia. We are still cold, we are still well below average, widespread frost, and the air masses are definitely conducive for snow, but we're unlikely to actually see much precipitation at this stage. But the GFS does something very interesting in the longer term. The high pressure hangs around. As I said, it's not going anywhere. It's not it's not kind of a hit and run high pressure system. It's not coming and then disappearing within a few days. It lingers around and right into the extended range. Look what it does. It moves northwards once again as we head into the middle of the month, and then we open the floodgates to bitterly cold air to our northeast. And not only bitterly cold air, but potentially very wintry air as well, as lower pressure is allowed to start to move in. You can see the huge pool of very cold air to our northeast and areas of instability and lower pressure. And you can see in the precipitation type, lots of showers starting to feed in from the northeast. The dew points are conducive for widespread snow. Look at the dew points widely below freezing. The 2-meter temperatures are all towards the low single digits, if not below freezing by this point. So the risk from the GFS is showing is cold weather coming in by the end of the week, but any proper wintry weather perhaps might take a little bit longer to evolve, and that is something we are seeing trending on the ensembles, but it is difficult to say exactly as it is very much in the longer range. Now, if you do have a look at the latest GM, again, westerly winds continue to come in over the coming days. High pressure system starts to build in, northeasterly winds initially by the end of the week. Again, the high pressure tries to build in, and it does successfully build in, and you can see it is sat out to our north or west, and it does feed in an easterly wind. Interestingly here, the high pressure does topple pretty quickly and actually does bring in slightly milder air mass, but again, we're likely to see an inversion underneath that regardless, so it still would be cold towards the surface. Interesting, both the GFS and the GM operational runs do bring milder air in, or milder upper air temperatures in very quickly, whereas the majority of ensembles and the ECMWF don't do that. So again, we'll have to see if that remains in these operational runs or whether there's just a bit of an anomaly. But similar to the GFS, right towards day 10, you can see the higher pressure building back to our west and out to our northwest. And from the looks of this, we are likely to see these areas of low pressure, or this big area of dark blues, tropospheric polar vortex there, very deep areas of low pressure containing very cold air to drop towards Scandinavia and down our east coast potentially as we see high pressure build in. So yes, GM isn't amazingly cold, especially in sort of the 7-day time frame, but in the longer range, again, shows prospects for continued cold and potentially even more wintry weather. Now, the ECMWF is probably the pick of the bunch today for cold weather from the operational runs, and you can see the westerly winds continue over the coming days. But Atlantic ridging comes in and it builds to our northeast, and you can see how the ECMWF is slightly further northwards and slightly further westwards, and that means a stronger easterly wind comes in initially, and some very cold air moves in. And you can see that easterly wind continues for a good 2, 3, 4 days before eventually the high pressure topples in around 7 or 8 days' time. After that, high pressure hangs around, but you can see again right at day 10 it is starting to retrogress and migrate westwards, and that could again unlock the door to this very cold pool that is sat well out to our north and our east. Even though the upper air temperatures don't look exceptional for the UK here, it still would be pretty cold at the surface. Again, daytime temperatures, we're looking widely around the mid to low single digits at best, and that is again, even though the upper air temperatures perhaps not freezing by this point, we've got lots of cold air trapped to the surface after multiple days of generally colder weather. Again, it's difficult to say exactly what will happen because the operation runs do differ slightly with their exact evolution over the course of the next couple of weeks. But the best way to view this is by having a look at the latest ensembles. If we look at the latest 6 o'clock ensembles, you can see a bit up and down over the next couple of days, but pretty much from around Wednesday, Thursday time, we're on a downwards trend down towards the -5 region, and we pretty much hang around there for the foreseeable future. Yes, there are some milder runs, including the GFS operation runs. Yes, there are some extremely cold runs, bringing in sort of beasts from the east sort of air masses around that -10 to -15 region. But the majority has set around that -5 area, cold enough for snow. And again, we'll have to see exactly how it does evolve. Definitely is a lot more spread on the GFS than on the ECMWF. But again, that's just something that has been highlighted over the past few days. But the outlook is still looking fairly cold, and that looks like to prolong for a long period of time. Dew points look very cold as well. We need around dew points, around the freezing point to see snow, and that is looking likely in around 6 or 7 days' time. It's looking to stay around the freezing point. So by next weekend, dew points will be below freezing, and it looks like it could hang around freezing for the foreseeable future. The ECMWF ensembles are perhaps even more bullish, and you can see again from around Wednesday, Thursday time, we're on a downwards trend. It's around the -5 point, which is pretty much where all ensemble members get to, perhaps even colder than that, and we hang around there for a good few days. It's around 10 days time, around sort of the 8th, 9th, 10th of January. That is where the uncertainty builds again. You can see some of the runs go slightly milder and then perhaps colder once again. And for what I infer from that is what we saw from perhaps the GFS and from the other runs where we did see the high pressure topple in, bring in slightly milder air before eventually builds further northwards and westwards once again. So it's a very complex outlook over the course of the next couple of weeks. And if you have listened to this and watched this and thought, it looks really complicated, don't really know exactly what's going to happen, the overall outlook is it is going to be cold, potentially very cold at times. The uncertainty we do have, as I said at the start of the video, is the longevity. It is the severity and timings of everything, and of course wintriness as well. Will we actually see any snow from these sort of patterns, or whether it's going to be isolated snowfall, isolated showers, or could we actually see a proper cold and wintry spell? Still are unsure, but the one big change we've seen in the last couple of days is confidence that it is going to be cold, it's going to be well below average. That is skyrocketed, and we are fairly sure now that we are going to be heading into quite a cold period. Just don't know what that cold period will contain at this stage. So it is a very complicated pattern, lots going on, lots of little kinks we have to sort out, and still some things that could really put a spanner in the works. And we will just have to keep you updated over the next few days. But as I said, if you are looking forward to something wintry, something much more seasonable, as we have had pretty poor December, really, in terms of seasonal colder weather. Of course, we saw cold weather in November, and then it kind of disappeared as soon as we head into December. We had a bit of a model flop around Christmas. But it is looking pretty confident now. It is going to go a lot colder, just as I said, what that cold weather does contain. Snow, ice, frost, easterly winds, northerly winds, or just generally high pressure around. Difficult to say at this stage. As we've seen from all of these operational runs and the ensembles, there is still a whole array of outcomes. The only real consistency is it is going to be cold. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you have enjoyed. Make sure to wrap up warmer later this week and get ready for generally cooler and colder weather. And I'll see you again for another video soon.